You are listening to the Information Security and OSINT podcast, episode 28, originally released on October 8th, 2020. As always, I'm your host, Josh Amishav. This week we have Fredrik Alexandersson, or better known as STÖK, on the show. STÖK is well known in bug bounty circles. He's a hacker, trainer, and content creator, perhaps best known for his bi-monthly YouTube show called Bounty Thursdays, which, if you're not already subscribed, I highly recommend it. I'm constantly learning new things. My three main takeaways from our conversation were: 1, when hunting for bounties, you should always specialize in a couple of specific bug types. 2, why you should constantly scan a multitude of bounty programs to get alerted when new assets pop up. And 3, why you should hack with a team and not alone. You'll enjoy those 3 things plus a bunch of other tips along the way. Direct support for this podcast comes from BreachSense, the data breach monitoring platform. I'm curious, how many listeners to the show are confident that your personal credentials aren't floating around the underground right now? More importantly, how many of you are confident that your employees, your customers, your spouses, or your children's credentials aren't floating around the underground either? At BreachSense, we use human intelligence to capture stolen credentials before they get leaked to public forums and pay sites. We then crack the hash passwords to give you visibility into whether or not the account needs to be updated. Head on over to breachsense.io/contact to start your free trial and learn how you can prevent account takeover and stop online fraud. STÖK, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's epic to be here.
Great. Can you tell us a bit about who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, I'm a hacker, creative content creator, and bug hunter that's been in the IT industry for the last 25 years and just recently started to do bounties and creating YouTube content and all that full time.
Cool. Okay, so we have a lot of pen testers that are thinking about making that jump to bug bounties. Can you tell us a bit about your journey, how you did that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think they should, because it's so amazing. You know, I'm madly in love with bounties for the idea or the concept that you're actually allowed to hack on some of the most hardened targets on the market, and you're allowed to throw almost anything at them, and without the risk of just being thrown into jail or somebody saying that step out of scope or you did this thing wrong or whatever reason it is. So you can experiment a lot and find new techniques and fun stuff. So I would say what really got me engaged into bounties was that I was on the offensive side, but then again, I was primarily, I have about 45,000 hours invested as a consultant in Active Directory. So I've been doing a lot of Active Directory design and architectures and building and doing that kind of stuff. And when you do that stuff, you need to be able to put that safely on the internet. And when things just don't go your way, it's going to break down. So I needed to double check or just verify that the things or the implementation that we did were up to code. Like if we put stuff online, there's always a risk that something's just going to be poked at by somebody. Like that's
small risk.
Yeah, it's a small risk. If you put it on the internet, it's like and don't have a firewall rule in front of it. It's like first time it's shame on me. Second time it's like, okay, shame on me again. I fucked up. That's how it is, because somebody is eventually going to poke at it, especially in cloud instances where IP addresses change over time, and eventually you will end up with somebody else's IP address and stuff. So that's happening all over. So I would say, if somebody's in pen testing today and they are tired of filing the same reports of that boring kind of stuff and want to get into a really competitive but also very creative space, because there's 2 ways to look at bounties. You can either look at bounties as, okay, it's just these skids that run all these scripts all over and there's no real high value reports. Or you can look at the ones that do the really insane research and super cool stuff that and just creates new tools in the open source bounty space. There's so much research going into the bounty community right now, because you have to push the limit. You have to push the edge cases. That's kind of what you need to do. So there's a lot of research going in. Because if you find those kind of stuff, it means a lot of money. And that's the thing. It's a driver of curiosity and reward. It's a high risk, high reward kind of payout. You need to invest time. Eventually, don't get a single penny, but if you find something, it'll be a big reward for you. So that balance is really interesting. So if you're doing pen testing right now and feel like I need a little bit of a challenge, I want to see what are my skills. Is there any cool stuff I can do? Then definitely do Bounties. Because there's nothing easy there. Everything is blind. There's no stack traces for you to follow. You're not getting any SQLi returns where it dumps the database in your face. You need to figure that out in a timed attack or play around with it in really, really fun and different and intuitive ways.
So how does a bug bounty, I guess the methodology, how would that differ then from pen test methodology?
I would say you can just take whatever kind of AppSec methodology that I have today. If you're doing your stuff, like you're doing your recon, you're identifying your eventual vulnerabilities, so you're walking the site and getting coverage and checking your boxes and do that. You can do that too. But the coolest thing about if you compare Bounties to pen testing is that if you're doing web app pen testing, you need to deliver coverage for the customer, which means you need to know at least a little bit about certain stuff, but you need to cover as much space as possible in a short time as possible. And you compare that to Bounties, where since you're not getting paid by the hour, you're getting paid by the impact you deliver. That means that you can specialize in certain areas and really, really, really go deep on that kind of methodology, be almost like a specialist in certain areas, and then take that knowledge that you have and play it broadly over like 5 million subdomains, right? And see whatever you can find. So it's the depth versus breadth combination, and you're not limited to time.
Right, I like that specialization analogy.
Yeah.
That's quite good. So, what was when you first got started? What did you specialize in?
Race conditions, and because they are super hard to identify and they requires knowledge around infrastructure and app communications. And since I still can't code for shit, I'm terrible at that. I think I submitted 1 or 2 XXSs in my lifetime because I don't do those kind of bugs. I do business logic, I do XML or XXEs and race conditions. Those are my special niches, and I'm really, really good at those. And identifying patterns around it or infrastructure that might be vulnerable. And I like that.
Sorry, can you give us a race condition example?
Yeah, for sure. Like a basic race condition example would be, let's say that you're buying something, right? Maybe you're checking out at an e-commerce site. And you're buying a white T-shirt, and you have this voucher that gives you a 10% discount or $1 off or something. And you enter that, and it's gonna remove that from your bill or what do you like? I don't find the word for it.
Total bill.
Okay. Yeah, the total bill, right? This is going to remove that. But imagine instead that race condition works in a certain way where instead of you sending one request in, imagine that you were a goalie. You're standing in the goal, and you have one football player just shooting a ball against you. You can get pretty much a good idea of what happens. Like one ball, one kick. I'm just going to figure out where this is going to hit. If you instead imagine there were 100 people with 100 balls kicking them at exactly the same time coming at you, because that's what you're doing with the race condition. Instead of you sending one request, you're sending it in, but you're pausing it, and then you're multiplying it 100 times, waiting for the package to deliver, and then delivering all 100 packets at the same time. Bam! And the system is just going to choke out and eventually get 1, maybe 2, and then 3 or 4 just heads in, and voila, you have now a 30% discount on your order. That's a race condition.
Cool. Okay, now I know you're a big fan of Burp. Are you using the standard Burp intruder for that, or do you need the turbo intruder? How do you test for something like that?
Oh man, when James dropped turbo intruder, we were in Amsterdam, and he gave me an early bit of it, and it changed my fucking life. I'm like, oh my god, it's so amazingly fast. But you can absolutely do it with Burp intruder, absolutely, on a low latency line. There's just It's just about the developer hasn't thought about the locking mechanism on how the requests come in. And I've been able to produce race conditions on huge sites that you wouldn't think that they would be there.
Okay. And is that like an intruder? Aren't they sending sequential requests? I mean, you can do it pretty close together, but they're not like all at the same time. Does that matter?
Mm, not really. It doesn't always really. If you send null bytes, they're all the same request. So you'll send in intruder, right? You have the same request, and instead of sending different ones, you'll just say null payloads, which means it's the same one. Put in 100 threads there. Don't encode it, and just say, "Hey, here we go.
Oh, so
Blast
it's
away."
increasing the number of threads. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Awesome.
And then you're
Okay.
smashing it. And if you want to get really good at it, spin up a VPS as close as possible to the organ. The closer you get, because bandwidth and latency is a big key takeaway here. So let's say that your victim is running a site in AWS West. Make sure you spin up a VPS as close as possible. So you need to do a little bit of OSINT there to get as close as possible. And then you spin it up there. Then you're on the gigabit backbone on the internal network. Fast.
Cool. How do somebody prepare themselves mentally for bug bounties, especially if they're coming from a steady pen test income where they've got a monthly salary, going to bug bounties where you can have a lot of dry spells? How do you do that mentally?
I would say don't make the jump at day one. Make sure that you pace yourself. What I did was really successful for me, at least, and I'm not saying that it's going to work for everyone. But I went into my employer and I said, I need to make a pay cut and just work 4 days a week instead of 5. So I can take 1 day of the week to invest in my own projects. And that was Bug Bounty. So that's where the term Bounty Thursday comes from, because I took always Thursdays off because I wanted to work on my own projects. And that was all in from 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock when my wife came home. That was bounties for me. And I would do only live target, no practicing, none of that, because I wanted to learn and stay with one program. And I usually say that I try to fall in love with the program just to understand how it's built, like every aspect of it. Because when you have that bigger understanding, that's where you start to finding the logic bugs or understanding how systems work together, and you're monitoring them. And suddenly there's a new JavaScript update, and you know about that, and think it's a dance, right? But everybody needs to understand that bounties, if you're doing the public ones, and they are amazingly a lot of them, there's a lot of bounty programs out there, and they are pushing code every day. What you need to think about when you enter this is that, first, know that these are battle-hardened targets. These are some of the most hardened targets out there, because they are professional security teams securing them. And they've done all the scans. They've done all the stuff. And there's a lot of people poking at them. With that in mind, take a step back. And just before you start, take a couple of breaths and say, wow, they just pushed a new commit. I'm the first one there. And then you enter. Because then you know that you're the first one looking at that, because your eyes has never touched that area before. And it's only you there, and it's a fresh commit. That's all you need to focus about. And then let your creativity and your experience and your curiosity for just finding weird stuff and anomalies in that application flow.
Okay, so in order to be able to do that, you need to be tracking the scope for a specific program daily. Do you use something like AMAS for that? Are you scanning, or how do you figure out when they drop new code?
Yeah, you can do that. There's a plethora of different softwares out there that use monitor changes for you. And I don't usually do it, but I imagine that if I do a flyover, because I do that constantly, like just give me a recon map of what's going on. What kind of subdomains do they have? Has there been any new subdomain coming out? Do I see any difference in the code base? Like, does it look different? Does it feel different since the last time I was there? And if it's the first time I'm there, I'm just gonna assume that it's a fresh commit. That I'm the first one. I just need to figure out how this works, because everything is blind. There's no customer to ask, like, what do you guys do there? You have to figure that out. It's like putting a puzzle with all the pieces down, and you don't have the box to look at. And you just need to figure out, is it 1,000 pieces or 5,000 pieces? I have no idea, but you need to start somewhere, one piece at a time, because eventually you're going to get the whole map and understand what's going on. You don't need to worry that much about monitoring when you eventually get to the stage that you know the program and you understand what goes on, that you can do monitoring and have notification if changes happen, so you're there really, really fast. But to be honest, most of the really cool bugs, they've been around for a very, very long time.
That's inspiring to know. It gives hope. Now, when people come from a pen testing background, they're running the burp active scans, and you're going to find a lot of the same stuff. Now, which works fine in a pen test, but when you're competing against a lot of other people all running the same tools, how do you suggest someone can differentiate themselves to find something that's not going to be a dupe?
Don't rely on the tools. If burp tells you that there's going to be a XXS there, or there's going to be some other thing in there, you can just, okay, that's probably going to be a dupe. I'm going to just practice writing a report this time. But I wouldn't rely on using burp scanner or doing that kind of stuff. I do that primarily when I know there's something that's out of my interest, but I spend most of my time in intruder, custom word list, custom payloads, custom stuff that I want to chug at the system, and I want to know what's going on. So I'll look at the response times and do that, because most of it's going to be blind anyway. If you just chug in a SQL, it needs to be SQL injection. You need to understand that it's most likely going to be there, but there's going to be a WAF in between you that's going to block it. There's going to be some timed stuff that you can't deal with. You need to figure that out. So instead of just relying on the normal pen test methodology with the mindset that everything's just broken, you just need to understand that it's still broken. It's just not showing up.
It'll take longer to find.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on hacking alone versus hacking with a team?
Oh, hacking with a team is the best. It's the best. If you find a couple of crew members or friends that you can hack with, do that. It's nothing more rewarding than when you find cool stuff together. And especially when you have the possibility to vibe on each other. Like it's like jamming with a band. After playing a couple, going at a target at certain times. I'm a member of a group called Disturbance, and we always like do the same kind of thing. We have that little bit of methodology together, and in certain roles, certain people do certain things, and we'll just, if I find something that I know that I'm not going to be able to exploit, I'll just send it over to Corbinex, and he'll just smash it in minutes, right? And that feeling where you're vibing together, it's priceless for me. I love that.
Okay, and I assume that also helps on the mental side when you're not finding anything, to get some inspiration and feedback from other people as well.
Yeah, but if you're like two people, then it's a multiple set of eyes. If it's 3 or 4 people, that's even more eyes. Everybody has their own experience. Everybody has their own idea of what's going on. So I would say, yeah.
So when you started the 1 day a week focusing on bug bounties, how long did it take till that moved into a full-time, that you were able to generate enough income to make that sustainable?
After 6 months, I made more than I did on a whole year on my other job. So I realized that, okay, I need to choose here. Do I want to have this kind of volatile side hustle that generates a lot of money, but also gives me a lot of freedom to do whatever stuff that I want to do? Or do I want to have the comfort? So I had like a real internal social anxiety. I wasn't sure about what to do. I questioned everything, because if you've been doing something for, like, I've been with the same company for like 17 years or so. I love those guys. Like, separating from that family was a big step for me, but for my personal growth, and I know that I wanted to create more art. I wanted to educate more people. I wanted to share all the knowledge that I built up over the years in a entertaining way for newcomers, in removing gatekeeping and still be sustained. Like, if I find 1 critical month, I'm happy. That's 10 to 15K. That's good enough for me.
Okay, that's and would you say that 6 months, is that somebody coming from a security background, is that like let's say an average time? Is that something that people could think, okay, they'll give themselves 6 to 12 months and then they'll be able to come up to speed?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. If you have a pen testing background, you're hey man, whatever you invest, you'll get back. That's how it works. And I know a lot of people that are full timers now that have that balance. You need to have that work-life balance. And I would say if you're a little bit older, it kind of helps. If you're just fresh out of college, you're not really sure what you want to do. And it's a very good thing to maybe, get a little bit of corporate experience. It's a good thing to understand how things work. You can either just go straight in and do whatever you want to do. That's cool. Play around with that. But for me personally, where I'm at mentally now, I'm way, way more comfortable because I know I can create results. Because I'm not worried. And in worst case scenario, I'll just go back to whatever I did before. It's not that I'm not sought after on the market, because I have results to show that I can go into pen testing tomorrow if I wanted to.
Has there been a huge influx in terms of the competition to finding bugs due to people being laid off due to COVID?
There's more people doing it right now. Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be even more. But then again, you need to also put that in perspective. There are more and more programs being launched, like every day. The Integrity, HackerOne, BugCrowd are just 3 of the top players, right? But there's maybe 10 to 15 other ones that are around that you can just join in, and you'll find a niche.
Do you suggest somebody signs up to all of them and just goes to any program that is completely wide, or do you focus just on one?
I would say diversify. Don't put all the eggs in one basket, because what's going to happen is that maybe you're working on this program that you really like it, but they put payments on hold. It takes 3 months for the payment to come out. There's a lot of these different kind of things that might be put in place for you to not be able to get that good old cash money straight ahead. So you need to kind of have this a little bit of a buffer. So I would say before you go all in, do it as a hobby first. Maybe cut a little bit of your work cost. Maybe, make at least, have a year's salary sitting on the account, and then just make the leap and have fun. You take a sabbatical. I in the beginning, I told myself I'm just going to take a sabbatical and I'm going to see how it works out. I got enough money to stay afloat for 1 year, and I'm just going to see what happens. And now we're in November. My sabbatical is coming to an end. And I'm like, I don't feel done yet. I think I'm going to try another one. So I'm just going to have another sabbatical and learning even more about offensive pen testing and hacking and learning, because I do a lot of fun stuff. And the freedom that comes with that is amazing.
How many programs would you suggest somebody be? You can't be obviously heavily involved in every program and kind of wrap your head around the scope. How many would you suggest, if you want to do this full time, would you need to be involved in and kind of following closely at a given time?
It's all up to the individual. I know people that go for breadth, like they scan all the targets continuously all the time. And they earn a lot of money on getting lows and mediums, but there's a couple of other ones that are like super heavily invested in really cool reversing of mobile apps that do that, and they do that. They just do that. You'll find your niche. I would say, sounds like hippie shit, but follow your heart. Whatever you like doing and that feels rewarding to you, do that, because that's in the end. It's no idea doing it if you're not having fun. Just have fun.
Okay, get back to that specialization bit that you suggested. That's great. Let's talk a bit about the creative side. How long have you been creating content for, and how did you get started doing that?
I think I started creating. I've always been creating content. I'm more or less born and raised with a video camera in my hand. That's been something that I've always been doing and recording since young age and having fun with that. But my parents have way too many, small cassettes of me just recording random stuff as a kid. But I felt like, as an extrovert or a person that likes to talk, apparently, I figured that if I could inspire other people to learn more about the things that I do, then that would be a good way. So I had a YouTube cooking show for a while, and then I had some other stuff, and sustainability vlogging. I run a sustainable fashion store as well. So I had done content and creating stuff with that, and then eventually I figured,
what is excuse the ignorant question, what is sustainable fashion?
Sustainable fashion is fashion that's organic, fairly produced, vegan, and ethical. So it's fashion without all the kind of plastic or slave labor or anxiety and stuff that most of the fashion in our industry actually is made of. So
So
it's
meaning like the clothes are produced
ethically.
in an ethical way. Okay.
Yeah, so people get paid. That's the thing. Like, you want to get paid a living wage or a slave labor wage. That's the big difference, right? And so sustainable fashion is clothing that's good for you, the person that created them, and the planet we live on. That's kind of how you break it down. And it's all good. This is a sustainable hoodie, pretty epic, like that. Or 100% organic cotton, no harsh chemicals in the printing.
Oh, it's got the and the disturb on the back. Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, so then, how long have you been making like the bug bounty content for on YouTube?
I started doing that in 2017 is when I started to do. I Since I was really invested in Active Directory, I did some pass the hash videos and how to hijack stuff, and I did that in Swedish. And then eventually I went to DEF CON and vlogged about it. And then I went to India to NullCon and vlogged about it. And then I started to vlogging all these things. And then I got part of the bounty circuit. And then I vlogged about that. And then then COVID happened. And I needed to find a way to create content that I would like to watch and share things that I was interested in. And that ended up being Bounty Thursdays, which is a bi-weekly show that I do on YouTube here in my studio. Then where I talk about what's happening in the bounty space, new tools, new AppSec stuff, and fun stuff that intrigues me. It's my curated way of just getting people that are in the community or in the scene or just nearby lurking to get inspired on what's going on.
Yeah, no, and it's an awesome show. Highly recommend it. It's great to learn about new tools that are coming out and new programs and new stuff in the bug bounty scene.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is your secret power?
I would say my secret power, constant curiosity and a very much ADHD, non-restless mind that always looking for new challenges. I think that's my superpower, the possibility to always wanting to learn new stuff. And but also, having that kind of mindset that I need organized stuff around me because my mind is always in a chaotic state. And that meant that I needed to invest a lot of time into like self-help and meditation and personal growth and that kind of stuff, because that interests me. So I would say my definitely superpower is to learn new stuff and implement them extremely fast.
Would you say that your ADHD allows you to look at, let's say, a bounty scope in a different way than somebody else?
I would say maybe I would say there's a lot of people that have some kind of neurological diversity in the bounty space, because you need to really think creative. You need to think outside the box. You can't just follow the norm. Checking boxes has never been my strong suite. So I really hated that with pen testing, is that you need to do certain stuff. I like to just I got a huge talent for scoping out and looking for anomalies, the things that stick out. Like I can look at a large pattern of stuff and see whatever sticks out like really fast. And I think a lot of people that have that kind of neurological thing have that possibility. And also like not being able to focus or extreme hyper focus in periods of time.
And that is a advantage?
Yeah, I think so too. I think so, because it's going from just not being able to focus, where your mind just flutters around and you're trying to find new ideas, until you find something that really interests you, and then you can't be disturbed when hyperfocus kicks in. It's like, boom, you're all in.
That's awesome. Great. All right. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I did not?
I don't know. Like, to be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in this space that is interesting, and but I would say for beginners, if you're a seasoned pen tester, when you give bounties a go, I would say go for it. like I'm seriously encouraging you to at least try it out, because it's hard, it's challenging, and when you find stuff, it's super rewarding, and it feels great to know that, man, I just owned Uber. That's a good feeling.
If people want to follow your content, where can they find you on the web?
They can check out my website, that's stökfredrik.com, or on all social media, it's just /stökfredrik. That's how it is. Twitter.com/stökfredrik, Instagram.com/stökfredrik. You'll find me there. YouTube.com/stökfredrik is primarily where I produce most of my content, and I do that on a weekly basis, more or less.
Okay, is the mailing list active?
It is active, but I've been working up a good content flow. So I'm just going to start pushing things out in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and they can sign up on your website as well?
They can.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure being here.
Well, that's it for today. If you have any feedback or questions, I'm on Twitter @Jamus, JMUSE. And if you got value from this episode, then please share it with a friend. See y'all next week.